let's turn to Acts 8. Let's turn to Acts 8. This will probably be at least 2, maybe 3 sermons with regards to Saul. So this will be from Saul to Paul. From Saul to Paul. So first you have to kind of find out who's Saul. You have to kind of see who this person named Saul is. So to give you a little bit of a background before we get to it. In Acts 6, there was a deacon named Stephen. Now, Stephen is accused of blasphemy for the Christian church, for his work in the Christian church, by the Jewish people and the powers that be that surround him. Now, Stephen is called, and they basically are telling him, you know, you have an opportunity to denounce God and live. And Stephen goes on for all of Acts 7. So all of Acts 7 belongs to the first deacon, Stephen. So he has a whole chapter to himself where he is talking about the wrongs of the people that are there and how Jesus is Lord. He makes a very compelling argument, so much so that it cuts the people that are listening to their hearts. It cuts them to their hearts. And because his words cut these people to their hearts, they put him to death. So Stephen is the first martyr of the modern Christian church. Okay? So now, with this martyr, though, he may be the first, but he is certainly not the last. He is the first, but he is not the last. And one man that helps in making sure that Stephen is not the last, his name is Saul. So we meet Saul here in chapter 8, verse 1. Now, Saul was consenting to his death. Now, who's his death, you might say? That is Stephen's death. So Saul, when he says consenting, that means Saul agreed 100%. He believed that Saul needed to die. Now remember, Saul is a blasphemer. Stephen to these Jewish people is a blasphemer. What he's saying about God and this man named Jesus being God and all of that, that is blasphemy. Now, Saul is present for all of this. And Saul, it starts off right off saying, agreed with Stephen being put to death for what he said. So Saul was consenting. He was all there. He was present. So how consenting was Saul? Well, we go on to say, at that time, a great persecution arose against the church, which was at Jerusalem. Okay? So let's pause there because we're going to have to really break this down in order to understand how bad Saul was. Now, the people, after Stephen's death, it was kind of like opening up the gates of hell upon the church. There's no other way to put it. They start persecuting. When they say persecuting, they mean killing. All right? So they're jailing and they're killing. Once they get one man, Stephen, they were hoping that Stephen would quiet down and denounce God. If he had done that, we would not have a church today. Let's just be very clear. But Stephen stood strong on his beliefs. And it empowered all of the other people to take Stephen as an example. So all of these other people also refused to deny God. In their refusal to deny God, as in the form of Jesus, the persecution arose against them. And by persecution, what they're really saying is murder, being put to death. So they all scattered, and they were all scattered throughout all the regions of Judea and Samaria, except the apostles, because the apostles, they were on a mission, so they didn't scatter. When you hear scatter, think of, what would be a perfect example? If a hurricane hit Bushy Creek right now, and all of our houses was destroyed, we would all go to surrounding areas. Like we have no home. So we would just go wherever we can find refuge. You may have family members in different parts of Texas. So you would go there. Some of you, like ourselves, we don't have family in Texas. So we might go back to Los Angeles because we don't have a place to live here. Now, what they did for evil actually turned out for what? Good. Because they didn't just scatter. What did they carry with them? The gospel. See, if they hadn't been scattered, then they would have all stayed here at Judea. And they would have had a massive church there, and it would have been great. But because they were forced to scatter, and we'll get to why they were forced to scatter in a minute. They were forced to scatter. They took with them the gospel of Jesus Christ. So all over now, they're going to this family member's house. They're going to that family member's house. They're going to this friend, that friend, wherever they can. And what's going with them? Jesus Christ, the light, the truth, the gospel, the good news. So all of these places are starting to experience for themselves the power of God. Now, the apostles did not scatter here, because scatter means they just ran. The apostles were on a mission. So they stayed true to what they had to do. So for them, they traveled places, but they didn't scatter. You get the difference? Like they may have went to Judea, but they weren't scattering to Judea. They're like, oh my God, I have no house. Let me go to Judea. No, they were going there because they had a specific thing to do at a different place. But when they say scatter, they literally mean like a tornado hit their community, and now they're gone. They're going wherever they can go to not be in the way of this tornado. And what tornado is that? Well, we go from 2. The devout people buries Stephen, and then 3. This is the tornado. The tornado is one man. His name is Saul. As for Saul, he made havoc of the church. He caused chaos. So they said they were scattering. Why were they scattering? Why were they running? Why were they? Where is this? It was Saul. So Saul was the chaos maker of the early church. What did he do? He entered every house. Can you imagine? Let's just pause right there. We live in Texas, people. Somebody comes to my house, they're going to get met with a gun. All right? You're not just coming into my home. Saul literally went to everybody's house and drug off men and women. He didn't say ask them nicely, right? He didn't even say arrest. He said what? Drug them out their house. Kicking and screaming. Fighting. So I want you to get the picture of Saul here, because if you don't understand who Saul was, you don't understand how great it was that he becomes Paul. So we have to spend a little time on this man named Saul. So Saul went to people's homes, uninvited, unannounced. He would ask a simple question: are you a Christian? Can't deny it. So they would say yes. And Saul would drag you out of your home. Just the men, right? No. Men, women, didn't matter. If you were a Christian, he's dragging you out of your house. And he would commit them to prison. Now we know from historical understanding what that means. If you went to prison, that means you went to what? Death. Right? Or some type of beating, some type of mutilation. It was not good for you to get drug off to prison. So Saul actively went after killing Christians. He went to every house, drug people out of their house, and sent them to death. So he wasn't just a non-Christian. He was what we would consider to be like a Satanist today, an active hater of Christ, and all of those that would dare to say that Christ is king. An active participant in the destruction of the church, and an active participant of the killing of Christian believers in the first church. After he's done with Judea, let's turn over. Let's turn right on over here to Acts 9. To Acts 9. Okay? So he's gone out to everybody's home. He's drug everybody out their house. He's gone to everybody's home. He has snuffed out all these pesky Christians. So now, then Saul, 9:1, still breathing threats and what? Friendship, right? No. Murder against the disciples. Let's pause right there. Breath. Every breath you take is a gift from God. Saul's breath. He hated Christians too so much to his core that with the breath of his mouth. Okay, I can't. How do you picture? How do I explain this? How much he hates people. Okay, I have a friend. Good friend of mine, mentor. Okay, mentor in martial arts, but not in life. Why is he not a mentor in life? Because he dislikes homosexuals. No. He doesn't just dislike homosexuals. Every breath, if you were to ask him a question, like you notice how you just gave him a napkin, he would somehow say that a homosexual would stop him from getting that napkin. Everything that he talks about somehow relates back to his hatred of homosexuals. It's to the point where if you don't even want to have a general conversation, because if it's longer than 20 minutes, guess what's going to come? Somewhere in that conversation will be about if we were talking about a whole other thing. And then he'll say, well, did you hear? No, I did not hear, because I do not care. Unless they're homosexualing me in my house, I do not care. But he follows these things. And every time, so every breath out of his mouth is about his hatred, some way relates back. That's how Saul is. Every breath out of his mouth will relate some way back to hating Christians. Breathing threats and murder. So there is literal blood, the blood of Christians on his hands. On his hands is the blood of Christians. Went to the high priest and asked from him to the synagogues of Damascus, so that if he found any who were in the way of Christ, whether it be men or women, he might bring them bound to Jerusalem so that they could be friends. No, so that they could go to jail and be murdered. Now, I want you to get this because this is key. Did the king go to Saul and say, I'm going to give you letters? No. Saul took it upon himself to go to the king and ask for these letters. That's how much he hated Christians. King Saul, he had done all the works that he could here, and now he wants to go to a whole nother place, to Damascus. Breathing. Think of every breath that comes out. You probably, during this sermon, I've talked now for 16 minutes, you probably breathed at least 20 times. Each one of those breaths for Saul was about how he hated Christians and wanted to murder them. He had murdered so many people in his home that he asked for letters to go to a whole nother place that has nothing to do with Saul, a whole nother place to murder them too. And the king's like, cool, and grants him the letters. So now we're going to pause right there. We're going to pause right there, and I'm going to go ahead and close my book. See how my book is closed? Because that's what we do to people. That's what we do to people. I want you to really get what I'm about to say. Saul was a serial killer. Saul was a serial killer. Who knows how many people Saul either directly or indirectly killed? If he was alive today, he would be on the scale of Jeffrey Dahmer. He'd be on the scale of those people that walk into a Walmart and just shoot up people. If we had news today, Saul would be in the front page of that paper with a big smile on his face. Why? He was killing Christians because he thought what he was doing was right. He thought in his hatred for Christians, he was doing the right thing. You can't get much worse than Saul. You can't get much worse than Saul. He didn't just kill people. He killed Christians. He didn't just kill Christians. He killed Christians with a smile on his face. He didn't just have a smile on his face. He enjoyed it so much he asked for a letter to continue doing it in a whole other community called Damascus. To a point where all the Christians scattered from him. They ran from him. They left their homes to get away from him. They left everything they had just so that they didn't have to come face to face with Saul, because coming face to face with Saul was coming face to face with death itself. No matter how bad everybody you know is in your life, they can't be as bad as Saul. No matter how bad they may be, what they've done or what they've done to you, they can't be as bad as Saul. Because Saul represents the worst of us. When we look out and we see those confused people parading around with satanic things and worshiping Satan and holding their little protests or whatever, when we look around and we see the gay pride parades with their floats and men dressed as women and dogs or whatever other nonsense they've got going on, and you say, those people are going to hell. Remember, you would have looked at Saul and said, that man is going to hell. But Saul tells us something in how depraved his mind was. Saul tells us something in how sick his mind was. You know what that something is? There on the road to Damascus, anything can happen. On the road to Damascus, on the road to doing great evil, anything can happen. We can't close the book totally on anybody. Until there's no longer life or breath in our hearts, until our eyes close, there's always a chance that there on the road, they meet Jesus. You might say, but he does this or she does that. Okay. But is it as bad as Paul? Nope. Saul. No. If Saul can be transformed, anybody can be transformed. There is a chance for all of us. For at one time, we were all like Saul, confused, lost, broken. At one time, we had a mind that didn't understand. At one time, even though you may say, I was raised in the church, that may be, but was that your mom's religion or yours? Until it becomes your religion, it is something else. Even the most depraved people, even the saddest of us, the lowest of us, they can be on the road to Damascus. So next week, we will be on the road to Damascus, and we will see the great transformation of Saul to Paul. Amen.